On Capitol Hill today, the House Ways and Means Committee will begin work on the president's $3.5 trillion spending bill, focusing on the tax portion of the legislation. Joining us now, Republican from Texas, Congressman Jody Arrington, and Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Democrat from Wisconsin. Both representatives serve on the House Ways and Means Committee. And I'm not sure, wow, this is a big topic to take on. Congress people, is it not? I'll start with you, Congresswoman Moore. Do you see Chuck Schumer pushing ahead, the administration, Biden administration pushing ahead, but in the background we have people talking about Joe Manchin's take a pause editorial in the Wall Street Journal, and that he won't go above $1.5 trillion. Is this all sort of theater? What do you expect really to play out? Do you think he can be brought around? What are your feelings? You must talk about that with your colleagues.
Not really. We're doing our work in the House of Representatives. As you know, the Committee on Ways and Means is the place where tax bills start. And so we are doing our work, putting together our budget reconciliation instructions. And Chuck Schumer, God willing, will work out whatever details he has over in the Senate. But this is we're doing our work. We're mindful that the Senate has to do it, but we're focused on 218.
Congressman Arrington, the other thing I saw today that it was in the Wall Street Journal, kind of just an interesting take on it. Because if Manchin's at $1.5 trillion, and there's some talk even among intra-party Democrats that maybe $3.5 trillion is not doable, Bernie Sanders, the Journal points out, said $3.5 trillion. There's already been major compromises to get to $3.5 trillion that he apparently made with himself, because it was $6 trillion. It was what he wanted. So he has already come down to $3.5 trillion. So I don't know what you Republicans are talking about. There's been major compromises.
Well, surprise, surprise, the socialist who is the chairman, and self-ascribed, that's not to be pejorative, but self-ascribed socialist who chairs the Senate Budget Committee thinks that $3.5 trillion is a good number to take from the American taxpayers who are already struggling because of the pandemic and government shutdowns. We have 10 million people or 10 million job openings, and too many people sidelined because they're getting paid by the government more than they made in their previous job. Listen, the best anti-poverty program and the best recovery strategy are the same: create more jobs. And $3.5 trillion of taxes are going to take us the other way, and they're going to chase jobs back overseas and make us less competitive. And by the way, most of this is going to be passed down in lower wages and higher cost of goods and services, as if we don't already have an inflationary crisis, which is a tax on every American. But most of this is going to be borne by middle class and working people. So this is one in a long line of disasters. I think this one will stick with our country, unfortunately, a lot longer than the border disaster or the disaster and debacle we've seen in Afghanistan. So I'm very concerned, with all due respect to my friend, Representative Moore, I am very concerned about not only the taxes, but the unionization of the workforce in every state, the PRO Act, amnesty and citizenship, which has been stuffed into this turkey, just like they filled the last COVID relief so-called plan with a bunch of progressive policies. So across the board, Joe, this is the biggest disaster, I think, that we've seen yet from our Democrat.
Congresswoman Moore, yesterday the cover of the New York Times said cradle to grave, expanding government to cradle to grave entitlements. Would you nod and say that's a good thing and it's nothing to worry about? In terms of the expansion of government, do you think that that'll hurt the economy at all?
Well, I don't even know where to start unraveling all of those Republican talking points. But just let me start here. They're talking the same old trickle down politics that the Republicans had no problem in this last Tax Cuts and Jobs Act adding $2 trillion to the deficit, only to create a situation where we had a historic a buyback of stock, $1 trillion buyback in stocks. And meanwhile, it contributed a great deal to inequality. And like, this is the same old story. We've tried trickle down before. We tried it with the Reagan tax cuts to the wealthiest. We've tried it with both Bush tax cuts, and we tried it with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And what have we seen? We've seen workers' wages stagnate